Okay, we are recording. I'm Dave Kuschel. This is Who's Caring for Your Lay Leaders on Friday at 10:30 in room 7. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to make it a little interactive as we go along. I want to hear from you guys. I wanted to start out by saying, put this presentation together and kind of piece these ideas together over the last few months. Really happy to have some elements in this presentation that I didn't know I was going to have when I first submitted the session, so we'll talk about that as one of our first things. But I thought, I've got this great idea, right? Talking about lay leaders. Who's caring for your lay leaders? And then I get here and I'm looking through the app before I get to Phoenix, right? And I see all these sessions on these really important, like, governance type topics, right? So if you look down the app and you say who's presenting, right? These are all great presentations, right? We have Paul Zills, the governance coach. We have Kurt Sensky, right, the author of The CEO and the Board. We have Brian Becker from Leaders Edge. Dr. Don Christian from Concordia, Texas. I went to their presentation yesterday. Karen Tripp from Cancer Companion started her own nonprofit, did a presentation yesterday on volunteerism, was fantastic. And I thought, oh my gosh, who am I? I almost went home after I saw this. Who is here? How am I qualified to be here? Well, I'm going to tell you why, I think, and hopefully we can engage, and then we'll all come to something that makes sense here. So, who am I? My name is Dave. I am a proud member of Christ Memorial Lutheran Church and parent of 2 children who have gone through Green Park Lutheran School in St. Louis. One is currently a sophomore at Lutheran South, and one is a freshman at Concordia, Chicago, right there. So I have been a leader, have been a lay leader. I was a member of the Board of Elders at Christ Memorial for 6 years. I was a secretary for the final 3 of those years. I've also been able to find really, really great opportunities to serve in other ways. I was a tribe leader, a small group leader for Youth Gathering in 2019, and hope to come back in 2025. I've been a service day site leader, multiple locations. This is from the Christ Memorial website. This is actually a site I was leading a few years ago where we did some yard work for some seniors at Laclede Groves in St. Louis area. And so really, really been pleased to have those kinds of positions, to be able to lead in those ways. At Green Park, I was a school board member for 6 years. I was the vice chair for 2 of those years. My term ended about 10 months ago, 9-10 months ago, so I'm currently not on the board anymore. I was a strategic planning committee chair, and I ran communications for our capital campaign, and pretty much anything else that they asked me to do, I would do. Quick story, which may have nothing to do with anything, but it usually gets a laugh, is I mentioned Green Park up there. So in 1996, I was a freshman at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri. And I was not Lutheran. I did not grow up Lutheran. And I met a girl, and we were dating in the spring of my freshman year. And she was a sophomore. She's a little older than me. And we've been dating about 6 weeks. And she said to me, when I get married someday, there's 2 things I want. And I was 19 years old, okay? She said, there's 2 things I want. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And she said, I want my kids to go to Green Park Lutheran School.
No.
And I wasn't Lutheran. I didn't know what a Lutheran was. I didn't know what a Green Park Lutheran School was by any means. And I was 19, so what did I say? I said, that sounds great, right? I just met this girl. So fast forward a number of years, and we're married. And our oldest child, who is now a freshman at Concordia, Chicago, is getting ready to go into kindergarten. And before I came to work for Concordia Plans, where I am very blessed to be working and love what we do, I worked for 10 years in public education as a communications director for school districts. And I loved the job. My dad was a public school board member for 25 years. My brother, sister, wife are all public school teachers. I'm a fan of what they do in a lot of ways. So our daughter was going into kindergarten, and we toured Green Park Lutheran School. And that's where my wife went. That's why it was such a thing, right? That's why she wanted her kids to go there, which became our kids. And we were touring the school, and we came home. And she said, well, what did you think? And I said, well, it's a very nice school. I mean, they're very, very welcoming there. It seemed like a really nice place to be. I said, but you know what? Because I worked in public schools. So I said, I didn't see the technology that we have in public schools. And they didn't talk about like gifted, or the activities are a little slim, the athletics are a little slim, all of these things. And she says to me, yes, that's probably all true, but at Green Park they'll talk to her about Jesus, and that's where she's going to go to school. And that's what happened. That's funny how it works out. So at Green Park, blessed to have both kids go through there and serve on that board for 6 years. And even now, I'm doing whatever I can to support them with what I do. I'm just curious. We don't have to go around the room, but I'm wondering how many folks in the room are either pastor, principal, kind of that on-staff leader who is working with lay leaders?
Well, I'm the church administrator.
Church administrator? Excellent. Okay.
Paid or no paid?
Paid or no paid? I'm just like, what is kind of the divide between those who are working and caring for lay leaders and those who are the lay leaders, right? So how many folks in here are kind of in those lay leadership roles? And you're awesome, okay. Let's just throw it out there. If anyone wants to shout out, why did you choose this session? We flew out here, right, from St. Louis, and they usually say on the flight, we know you have a lot of options when it comes to air travel. And I'll say, I know you have a lot of options. I mean, Stephanie even came here over her husband's presentation, so I appreciate that. So what anyone want to shout out, besides the two in the back who work with me, what about this presentation interested you?
Well, I was real interested because as not only for the lay leaders, but also for the volunteers, after they've been in volunteer roles for a while, all of a sudden it becomes work instead of a joy. And so I'm hoping that maybe I'll learn a little bit about how, from a lay leader standpoint, we can also not only encourage the lay leaders, but encourage all of the volunteers that we have.
Yeah, we'll have some ideas come a little later, and maybe as a group we can come up with others if it doesn't quite check all those boxes, but we'll see where we go. Anybody else interested in the topic? Yeah.
Just looking for any new ways to build relationships.
Awesome. That's great.
I'm a DCE and I'm responsible for lots of volunteers.
Okay.
And to me, this spoke to me I'm always trying to find new ways to encourage them, equip them, take care of them.
Support them. Yeah.
I'm a pastor's wife, but I grew up unchurched. So I'm very passionate about reaching out to even our own members. And I feel that there's a place to serve no matter who you are and what it is. So I'm always looking for new ways also to.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So a lot of what we're going to talk about, you'll see some things later that are kind of in the board or council kind of framework, but that's not a reason that it can't apply to other volunteers, other folks who are stepping up to help out, and things like that. So hopefully there'll be things that are applicable for you. So I mentioned yesterday I went to 2 sessions. I went to the session with Don Christian and Brian Becker, which was fantastic, about governance and policies, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. And then I went to the session that Karen did on volunteerism, which was they're both really, really good. And Karen used this big word that I added this last night, significance. And she really focused on this, and I told her afterwards I was going to do this, that I was going to talk about her thing, significance, really building a significant. Why is that volunteer or that leader doing what he or she is doing? They have to feel that, right? And that's what Karen made that point so well, that they need to feel that inside. Like, what I am doing is contributing. And it's kind of like, like you said in the back, like you do it, you start out, maybe it's a thrill, it's like, this is something new, I'm contributing in a new way, and after a while, it becomes just what I do, and maybe the passion isn't there, and like, where's that significance? What are they feeling? So I don't have much beyond that, except I just wanted to capture that thought because I thought it was really fantastic when she put that out there. So like I said, I served on the Board of Elders for 6 years. I served on the school board for 6 years, and I'm going to show you what I have come up with as the 4 types of lay leaders. This is not based in anything besides one guy's observation, but I've shared it with a few people, and I think it's very well received. And you can tell me what you think. We'll get to that afterwards. So I think we have our natural leaders, right? You have your natural leaders who are visionary. They motivate others to lead. They can have the tough conversations. At the presentation about governance yesterday, they used the term dynamic duo, right? How important it is for that board chair and the senior pastor, or the board chair and the CEO, whoever it is, to connect. This person is really connecting on that really personal, strong level, like trust level, with that on-staff leader. Proud ministry rep, will be your board chair or is your board chair and those kinds of things. And thank God we have these people, right? These people are dynamic leaders, right? And I can name off quite a few just people, and you see these people pop up and they're the chair of this board, and then their term ends, and then they're the chair of that board or that council, and thank God we have them, right? Because they can really get things done. And if anyone who wants this presentation, if you find any value in it afterwards, I'll give you my card at the end, or you can take a picture and I'll send it to you later, but just in case. The next group I'm calling those who are almost all in, and this is where I proudly place myself. I consider myself as an almost all-in leader, right? So what did I do? Well, I took on these lower-level leadership positions. I was secretary of the Board of Elders, and I was vice chair of the school board, especially if they align with the skill set. So my job is I'm communications director. What I do is I write. I write and I talk. That's what I do for a living. So when school or church needs something written, they come to me. And if I happen to be on the board at that time, well, then it's kind of in that board capacity. If I kind of happen to not be, I may not be. I mean, they have communications people too on staff, but just kind of from that leadership position. When I was on the school board, we had, you have a finance guy, and you had the facilities guy, and you have the other guy or woman who has this connection. And those people are really, really, really important to the board, right? Or to a council or to leadership. The almost all-ins, I say, we'll speak up in meetings, right? We'll communicate, we'll participate, especially, when the chair needs backup or this is not how we do things. I'm thinking back to a conversation from a year ago when I was still on the board, and just kind of getting people on the right path. This is how we do what we do in our role. Good ambassador for the ministry. Good relationships, maybe some of them deep, maybe some of them not so deep with various stakeholder groups, but a good rep for the ministry, right? And could be the board chair. Maybe, if those natural leaders aren't there at that time. So these folks are probably folks who are seeing a lot of significance in what they're doing and are feeling like, my role, I'm here serving a purpose, I'm here helping to lead this ministry. But we need to care for them too, of course, as well. I have what I'm calling the occasionals. This is the kind of your third tier of leaders on our boards. They're mostly consistent at attendance at meetings or events or places they need to be. They contribute on topics that feel safe to them, like I can speak up on this because either I'm agreeing with what 5 other people have said, or I know a lot about this, or I'm passionate. They don't volunteer to do too much. I said maybe a trunk or treat. I just came out of the school setting, right? And so thinking about this is where I could go do this. I could go represent the ministry. And some in the ministry know he or she is a lay leader, and some may not. I think about one person. So there's another. The last presentation I gave here was about consistent messaging for ministries. And at Green Park, I led the school through a mission and vision exercise right before COVID. And one of the things that motivated that was I was talking to a board member when I was on the board, and she had been. This is why it's on here. She had been to a trunk or treat representing the school, and she had 1 or 2 grandchildren at the school, and she had been on the board for at least 2 or 3 years at that point. And I said to her, next meeting, I said, how was the trunk or treat? She said, it was great. I loved it. I loved meeting all the people. It was so much fun. I loved being there for Green Park. She said, the only problem was I didn't know what to say about the school. And so that set me off this other path that I've gone down about consistent messaging, communications, getting everyone on the same page. But that's kind of what I think about when I think about occasionals, right? Like, they'll be there sometimes when you need them. They could step up sometimes, but maybe not as dedicated as some of those other groups we talked about. And then the last one is seat fillers, and I put seat in quotes, right, if they actually are in the seat at all. They're inconsistent in meeting attendance, rarely if ever contribute to meetings. They may be afraid of asking questions. They don't step up. Will anyone notice if his or her term expires? I'm not telling you to write these people off completely, but I'm saying if we look at our other 3 groups, there might be ways there to really build people who are already kind of had that higher level of investment. I served on that school board, and there was one particular person who came to those meetings and in 2 years did not say one word for the entire 2 years at those meetings. And I don't really know what value that was brought to the board. Now, maybe things were happening that I didn't know of, but really thinking about who is filling these seats, who is serving in these roles, and maybe could we be doing more? Could we find better people? They talked yesterday a lot in the governance session about finding the right people, and not just go finding people to serve, but finding the right people to fit what you need to serve, what you need, what skills you need, where you're going. And I thought it was really, really great a great point. And then after I did this, I came up with what I think is the fifth potential type of leader, which is actually me also, or was me, which is the formerly almost all in. And so I really found this very strong, and I'm asking you to think about this. So I was a parent at Green Park Lutheran School for a lot of years, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it was, years. And my second daughter graduated from 8th grade and went over to South, and I still had one more year on the board. The amount of connection that I felt to the ministry almost overnight, from one meeting to the next, the change was dramatic. And I wasn't dropping off there anymore in the morning. I wasn't seeing the principal at drop-off 2 or 3 times a week. I wasn't dropping in to pick her up and stopping by his office to say hello and have a chat. It was really, really noticeable to me. And I think that probably happens for people in different roles, whether it's school board or it's church council or serving in leading a committee or leading a volunteer group, where that connection they had was there and was really, really strong, and then something changed. And maybe as ministry leaders or as leaders of leaders, as volunteer leaders of leaders, we can see if that's happening. We can observe those things happening. Maybe there are ways to help bring those people back in, because you have people, I think, in so many cases, like I was not uninterested in the school anymore. I just found it a lot more difficult to be connected. My other challenge was I was term limited, and I had about 6 or 7 months left, and at that point, a lot of factors were happening. Yeah, so I was kind of moving. But so that's my kind of theory on these groups. I want to get some reaction. Anybody have any thoughts? Does any of this make sense? Is there like, oh my gosh, there's this whole group that I have to deal with that you haven't captured that I could tell everybody about? Or any reaction?
Makes a lot of sense. I think it is a good way to think about it too. As you're saying that, I can think about, okay, that person fits into that, group or whatever. So, and kind of prioritizing. That's part of why I came to this. Like, who do I prioritize of my lay leaders to really invest in?
Yep.
I think that's the hardest question as a pastor. Is like, I've got a ton of lay leaders and some that who do I really prioritize? Who can I help take to the next level?
Yep.
And that kind of thing. So how do I prioritize my time, and thinking about where people are kind of helps me, especially almost in. I'm like those are some untapped people that need a little bit of nurture.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as an almost all in myself, I kind of see like I was really, really pleased to serve the roles I served in.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was really contributing. Now, if pastor or principal had come to me and said, Dave, the board chair has to leave or whatever, I really want to work with you. I'm not saying I have to be like, coddled, but those kinds of things help, right? You have people who are in, maybe they could go further, and maybe they can become a natural leader if that's possible, or can become kind of more comfortable in that role.
I don't know if you want to go this direction with this, but I think one character that may be in there, the lay leader, is an individual who's there for their own agenda.
That is exactly right, and I'm so glad you said that, and I should have put that. So my dad, like I said, he served on a public school board for 25 years, and he was president for a while, whatever. He had all the roles, and his 2 biggest things were the people who came on, who got elected on one issue only, and then when that issue became, they realized they were, in Missouri we have 7 public school board members, they realized they were one of 7, and they couldn't get anything done, then they just check out, right? Or they leave the board or whatever. And his other issue was people who never read the materials, which we all can probably relate to that too. People who show up to the meeting and say, what? I don't know. Didn't read the emails, didn't read the materials. But the agenda thing, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
Well, and that's what, that's okay. If you're going to say something about that comment, go for it, because mine's different.
It was tangential, but you raised your hand.
All right, go ahead. Stephanie can wait.
One group I think I would add was the been there, done that, but still could contribute, but just refuse.
That is a great point too.
I'm done. I did my part. It's somebody else's turn.
Burn out.
Yep. How do you turn those around?
Yep.
Because that's that 60, 70, and 80 group that they still have resources, they still have energy, but it's like, oh, we've already done that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because for some of them, I think there's the aspect of if they're burnt out, but I think for some of them, there's also a little bit of a chip on their shoulder looking at the next generation and saying, I did my time and now you need to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
The way that we did it.
Yes, yes.
No, you're absolutely right. This is great. I'm going to add these because I'm thinking back to the people that I served with, and when I got on the Green Park board 9 years ago now, I guess, 7 years ago, whatever. There was quite a few guys. They were all men who had been on for a long time. So Green Park is owned and operated by 4 congregations, all of which have board members. 2 of those churches have term limits, including mine. 2 of them do not. Why that is the case, I don't know, but that's how it is. And so we had some guys that have been there for 20, 22, 25 years, and it was what you're saying. I was the chair in 2007, so I did that for 2 years, and I'm done. I'm just going to be here. And there was some value there to, right, you had this experience, what has the board done here on this kind of situation before? But also, sometimes not productive. But what happened in our board, which was really interesting, is we went from that kind of board, which was skewed older, and over the course of the 6 years, a lot of those guys actually went off the board. They decided to stop, or 1 or 2 moved away. And then we started getting a lot of younger board members, the younger parents of the school. And I always said, and I really believe, it's really important to have active parents of the school on the school board if it's possible, if it makes sense. And we had those folks come on, and what I found those folks were, they hadn't quite gone to that first page natural leader almost all in. They were maybe occasionals trying to do more because they were just trying to really get comfortable, right? And we're going to talk a little bit here in a little bit about some ways to help them get comfortable. But they were quiet in a different way. And it was like, and I found myself as kind of in that transitional place where I was here with the old guys, I'm here with these new guys, I'm going to try to help things happen. And then my term ended. But yeah, that's a great point.
I also thought when you were talking about the seat fillers, I don't think it's a very common thing, but in my experience, I remember there being one person that definitely fit the description of seat fillers, but it was because she was so nervous and introverted and that sort of thing, where she did have a lot to contribute. But
they don't want to sound stupid. Yeah,
but it took a change in some of the other leadership before she was encouraged enough and felt safe enough, and then she became one of the best contributors, in that position. But she served on the board for like 5 years before that shift happened.
Wow. Yeah.
My response was to the seat filler and being like, okay, if they're there to fill seats, they come to board meetings and don't say a word, what do they need to empower them to move on? And that's why I liked the designations of the different groups, because you have to be intentional about how you support each group a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And it's not that I want to write off seat fillers, but to think through, how do we get you to feel comfortable saying? I don't
want to write them off either, and I may have sounded like that. I just remember as vice chair for those last couple of years and seeing this one particular person, but there were others too, who didn't say anything, and I'd come out of those meetings and say, why is he here? Yeah. I'm sure there is someone in that congregation who could be contributing something really substantial to this school, which is, we're doing important things right now. We're trying to grow. We're searching for a new principal at one point. So yeah, absolutely. And as we go along here, I'm going to share some stuff that really can talk about how do you bring people, some ideas for bringing people along.
Well, I think for the seat filler, maybe there's like a step before being on the board that's like, this is a way that you can like understand governance and understand how we're structured before you're like, we talk about this all the time, like church council is not where we want people to start. Like that's what we want you to grow into.
Yep.
We have a few people who always say, I don't want to lead something, but I'll be there. And if you give them one thing, or you'll say, hey, can you pull together a luncheon for this? They'll do that.
Yeah.
But they don't want to be visible.
Yeah.
I don't mind being behind the scenes, but I'm not going to make an announcement. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to. And yet they have such leadership qualities. It's like.
But at some point, if that's, and I don't mean this in a bad way, if that's what you're going to get out of that person, then we just appreciate that, right? At some point? Yeah.
We kind of changed our language a little bit from like committee, where people think long-term setting, to action teams. And when we say action teams, we can get so many more people to step up and do it for like a finite amount.
Because then the action will be over, right?
Yeah. For a short period of time.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
A lot of those people that will step up and lead an action team, where they would never, run for church council or anything.
That's awesome. So I'm going to move on. And so the piece here that I didn't know I was going to have until I had it was, so I'm at Concordia Plans, right? And so we have contacts and ministries all over the LCMS who administer our benefits, offer our benefits. And we created a survey. And you're going to see the responses here. And we sent it to ministry contacts and said, please share this with your lay leaders. And so it's kind of a connecting the dots exercise, because we don't have lay leader contact information at Concordia Plans. I mean, maybe a few, but right, that's not who we deal with. We talk with people at the ministry. So we asked them to send it along. And I was very, very pleased that we received more than 200 responses from lay leaders in currently active lay leader roles in the Synod. A couple of districts included it in their newsletters. This is the Northwest District, so I appreciate them. Michigan did, I think one or two more, to get that link out there to take the survey. So I'm going to walk through it. This is really kind of informational. I don't think a lot will be a surprise in here for folks, but just to kind of maybe reaffirm some thoughts about what's happening with lay leaders in the Synod. I also forgot to mention at the beginning, in addition to not being a policy governance expert, the other thing this presentation is not an indictment on the way that ministries are treating their lay leaders today. That's not what I'm here to do. I just want to say this is what folks are saying. Here are some ideas, and maybe there's something that can help you as you move forward. So the first thing we did was we found out who are we talking to, right? So what type of ministry do you serve? Church only was 38%. You can read down the line here, but mostly church-based, a few at the standalone schools, but mostly those are the folks that we talked to or that we heard from. I know we're over 200 responses now, I'm not sure, but we had a pretty good number. We were pleased with that. For how long have you served as a lay leader at your current ministry? 10 years or more. We talked about long timers. Maybe I didn't put 20 years or more in here, but that could have been interesting to see what the answer is. So you can see our biggest numbers are there, 10 years or more. Between 1 and 5 is where our leaders are mostly falling here as of today, or at least those who responded to our survey. How would you describe the orientation you received when you began serving as a lay leader? So I wanted to have the participation's been great. You guys are awesome. A little extra participation. Guesses. What percentage of the folks do you think said 0? I had zero orientation when I was a new lay leader. What's your guess?
At least half.
Okay, at least half.
70. I think the second one has more.
Think the second one's the most? Like just enough, like they told me enough. So this reminds me of my orientation story on the school board. Was my father-in-law actually was on the school board before me, and I actually took his seat. We go to the same church, just how it worked out. And I came onto the school board, and he said, "Oh, Dave, I've done all this work, and I've created this new member orientation manual, and so-and-so over here is going to be your help you out through this." And he gives me the manual, and no offense, he's a great dude. It was useless. There was nothing in there that was helpful to me as a lay leader on the board. But maybe that would have been limited, right? So here's what we heard back. 33% said 0. So not over 50%, right? Limited, how is that defined? Maybe it was one quick conversation. Maybe it was some series of things, but that's what we came back with. So maybe not as bad as some folks in the room thought. We did ask for their thoughts about their orientation, and I've got a few slides here. We got a lot of comments. People really responded to this survey, which was great, which showed that there's a lot of interest in the topic. So here's some things we heard back. I won't read them all to you, but there were a couple of pages written about being an elder. That and guidance from experienced elders was enough. I work side by side with the leader of a trustee team at the church and other projects. In recent years, our ministry has improved in the area of helping lay leaders understand their role and how to contribute to leading the church and school. We're continuing to work to improve the orientation process. So this slide is kind of like, hey, we had positive comments. We certainly did. Next slide, maybe a little bit different. Mostly a learn as you go. I observed others that I worked with. We've talked about creating an orientation for new board chairs, but there's been no movement forward. This third one, I don't know what ministry this was, and I don't want to know, but talking about how I didn't feel like I was being heard at all. I was begging for time. I was begging for direction. And then the one at the bottom, this person was voted in as VP and then became the president within 2 weeks because someone had left. And maybe stories that are familiar to some of you from ministries that you're familiar with. Again, maybe not anyone's fault, but these are the kind of the challenges that some of these folks are encountering as far as orientation goes. And then this last one, we had a whole bunch of people who responded kind of, I've been there and I've done that before. And so I was able to step in. And a lot of it was at another church. I was in a role at another church. Now I'm here and I use those skills as I came over. This is just a portion of the comments that we received. And if anyone is really interested, I'm happy to share them. We don't have them assigned to any ministry or anybody's name. We wanted to keep it confidential or whatever the right word is that way. But you can see how people responded there. Our next question was about training. Since starting your role, what kind of training have you received? Throw it out there again. Are people assuming no training is going to be a high number here that I've received? They received no training. Any other thoughts on?
I think that limited is probably still going to be the majority.
Okay. All right. Well, we shall see here.
I would say third.
All right.
33% already. I would say we're going to be pretty.
All right. Well, and I'm sure there are variations of these three answers, right? This is kind of what we came up with as a way to categorize here, but here's what we heard. 48% no training. And thinking about, well, either I was or I wasn't onboarded. Either I did or didn't have orientation, and then there was no training after that. No training to help me or us as a board or as a leader or as a committee head or as a volunteer get better at what we do. So 14% say comprehensive. The rest, I guess, 86%. There's definitely room to grow there. Is it hard? It's hard, yes. It's hard to know how to train a board. It's hard to know where to start. But I think what we see here today is that starting somewhere, right? And we'll talk about some ideas for how to do that too. Could help your ministry. Here's some other thoughts about training. My training came from my previous leader. I've learned a lot since being in positions. We attend multiple meetings, consist of training sessions. Third one, I used my MBA work and the work seminars to grow as a leader. Bottom one may be very common. I just rolled up the sleeves. I co-labored with the other leaders in partnership with the staff. Full onboarding to follow soon. I would have liked to have more training. The third one, again, is a really kind of strong take. Again, don't know where that came from, and we don't need to know, but the person is wondering, I think, what role he or she is supposed to play at all as a lay leader in the church. And other former council members are available to ask. I think that's, yeah, okay. So as of today, do you feel knowledgeable and trained to serve as a lay leader in your ministry? 90% said yes, in one form or another, right? So here's an indication that maybe onboarding wasn't great, maybe training hasn't been great, but people have just dug in. At least the ones who are responding to this survey. They're digging in, they feel like they're getting the job done. Of course, the question is how much more could they be contributing with the right training, with the right orientation, with the right resources. We don't have that measurement, of course, but these folks feel like things are getting done, or that they're getting things done. We were glad that only 3% said, I don't know what I should be doing. That's good, probably only a few people. How would you characterize the connection you have with those you serve? We were thinking and it was in the longer question, congregation members, parents at the school that I serve, whoever that might be. The majority of them know who I am, right? Only 13% said very few people know who I am as a lay leader. Really, really important, right? That people know who is leading this church besides the pastor or principal or the staff, and that I can go to that person with concerns, questions, ideas, whatever that may be. So it seems like word is spreading well about this type of thing. Could you deliver a 30-second elevator speech about your ministry? 87% said they could, right? This kind of goes back to my other passion I talked about earlier about messaging, so I threw this question in there because I was curious. What I would say is, it goes back to the volunteer who said I didn't know what to say about the school. You may be able to deliver a speech like that. What are you saying? Would you really know what to say? You think you know what you say? are you communicating what the ministry would hope that you would communicate about the ministry? Not that I want everyone to be a robot, we're not going to go out by script, but there are certain things that we like to put out there about our ministry. So, but 87% said that they could. I think this is the last one. Do you feel you have the opportunity to contribute to your ministry in your role as a lay leader? Well, I left these out, but you can kind of see based on some earlier things here, the answer was yes, right? So 86% said yes. Nobody said, I'm okay being a seat filler. Now, right, the people who are answering the survey may not be the seat fillers because they may not even have clicked the link or opened the survey or taken the time. So we're probably a little skewed there. But the folks who took part basically said, yeah, I'm contributing to this ministry. This is good, right? This is a good place to start. And think about what more we could be doing by upping some of those things we talked about at the beginning. We did ask for comments to this question, or there was one question at the end with comments. The first slide here is kind of on the negative side, and we'll end with the positive side as far as the survey goes. But what would help you feel cared for and valued? Occasional encouragement would be nice. A little more checking in with me would be good. This person had a longer comment, but it basically was saying, which is similar to this. This person down here in the middle basically said, I want to know if I'm doing well. I don't know if I'm doing well because nobody's telling me. I have nothing to judge what I'm doing by. And as a board, we have nothing. And so I think we're effective, right? Bottom right, we talked about, how do you find people? It's always the same people, that's often talked about. Get others involved, so it's not always just us, this group. So I really appreciate people who responded to the survey, give that honest feedback to, yeah, I'm here, I'm doing it, here are some challenges that I'm facing. And then we had the positive too, of course. Pastor, is always good to remember Christmas gifts. We are periodically recognized, we have annual outings, my congregation is very caring and often tell me I'm doing a good job. I have congregation members who tell me I'm doing a good job. The pastor thanks the volunteers. And I ended, of course, with, I think I am appreciated. I am well appreciated. I am blessed. So, I know I went through all that very fast on that survey. But any particular takeaways from things that were there? Anything surprising? Probably not. Did it kind of go along the lines of what you thought people would be saying about their experience?
That last question on the survey.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about the second one down. Yes, I have the opportunity. Yes, my opportunity is limited, and I would like to do more.
Yeah.
Is that because they're limited by the church, or they personally are limited?
That's a great question, right? I don't know. We didn't ask the follow-up, right? So it could be either, right? My opportunity is limited because I feel I can only do so much in this role. I'm only allowed to, or I only have that much influence or whatever, versus I want to grow, I want to be better as a leader. It's a great point.
The middle one, the no feelings or opinion either way, is interesting.
It is interesting, and when I wrote the question, so we have a market researcher at Concordia Plans who helped me with this, and he inserted that, which I thought was really interesting, and I kept it in there, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know how you don't have any feelings or opinion. Maybe you just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like that becomes like a no.
Yeah. If you don't feel like you are, you're probably a no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that does represent some of the seat fillers. They're like, yeah, I have the opportunity, but I have nothing to contribute.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. So that's what we learned. Like I said, if you want to see more, we have pages and pages of comments. A lot, but I tried to pull things that were representative of what was being said. So probably not too much there that would be surprising.
The one thing that I did find surprising, or at least the acknowledgement that so many people, right, they're natural leaders or almost all ins, come in with other experience.
Yep.
That isn't universally true, but there are people that you can tap into that have skill sets and training that lends itself. But what do you do with people who don't have the MBA?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did, we kind of have a presentation in sections here, right? We get through this survey. So what can we do?
Well, can we go back to the last slide?
He's my boss, so I have to say yes. Yes, sir?
Yes, first. Give me a minute to give context. So, for those of you who have been in the nonprofit world for a long time, you realize that you have to do donations, right? And years ago, when people would give donations, the usual standard operating practice would be to send a thank you note and a receipt, right, to get the tax deduction. Well, in the past decade or two or so, what's come out is the recognition that people don't just want to be thanked per se, they want to see the impact of their gift, right? So now you have impact statements that come out more regularly from nonprofits, right? Take that same concept, because we give time, talent, and when we volunteer, right? I think these people are all getting thanked, and some of them are talking about being recognized, but I'll go back to that word that was used before, significance and impact. The way I think we can really continue for our leaders and volunteers to have passion for what they're volunteering for is to show the impact of their work. So those people who are seat fillers probably feel disconnected from the ministry. If you can't show an impact or a significance to them, you got to move them off, right? But those that you want to keep, to build up, to invest in, show the impact of what they are doing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So this next section is some ideas, and the first couple slides you're going to say you're stating the obvious, but then we have a few more substantial things to talk about. So what can we do, right? We can onboard and train. Easier said than done, right? But I pulled these quotes from Board Effect, which is an organization that I know a Concordia Plans Board uses as a reference or a tool for whatever the case is. But talking about how organizations that train and educate their board directors make an important investment in their leadership, has a direct bearing on the organization. Makes good boards great. And then speaking of kind of people come with an agenda, that second one, as boards grow and learn together, it's easier for them to put personal and political agendas aside and put the needs of the organization first. People have they understand the significance, right? They have a better understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it and the role that I can play in doing that. Again.
Speak to that second, because I think that's often, I'm on a church staff now, it's a different season of my life that I was in business and in a different board, but oftentimes you're brought into these things, and oh, we need someone with your background, and so you're brought in ostensibly as there's a problem, or you're a problem solver, you're going to fix this, but then you get into the culture of the board, and they're like, well, we really don't, we're not fixing problems, we just look at wisdom here, and then so I think setting those expectations, I don't know if hopefully you go in there somewhere, but
we'll talk a little bit about that.
It's so important, because I think it's that creates then the seat fillers where guys are like, hey, well, I agree to this, but they don't really, you know, I think you have to be very careful when you invite people onto what are we looking for, and
absolutely
on the front end, because I think most people then will serve well if they understand what the expectation is. And I think that sometimes that those people fall in those cracks because they don't.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Because they feel like they're needed, and then maybe that's not really what we want from them.
And then what am I here for, right? Absolutely. So thinking about onboarding and training, I mentioned that new member orientation binder that came to me. Like, start somewhere, right? Start down this road. Like, how can we do a better job of onboarding our new members? How can we give them a chance so that when they show up, they're in a better position than they were before, right? So form a small team of current board members. Ask them to think about this, right? Ask them to think about what resources would have been helpful to you when you started. If maybe they started last year, maybe they started 15 years ago, whatever it is. But thinking about what resources could be most impactful to a new board member as they're coming on. I think about the new board members who joined our school board, and it was, so-and-so is the new board member from Peace, and let's welcome her, yay. All right, what's next? And I think that was about the extent of it. And so what can we be doing to help better prepare them? Have the board brainstorm resources they can create for future members. Talk to the staff, if it's applicable, right? Those who make the most sense. What should new board members know when they start serving about our ministry, about the way we work, about the way we operate? Think about how we can do that. And if you have nothing, right, and we saw that a lot of people have nothing, I would say in most cases something is going to be better than nothing, right? And you can start building and start thinking about how are we bringing people in, understanding what we do here, understanding the significance of what they're doing here and their role. Gather minutes from previous meetings. Stephanie, you kind of mentioned something like this. Engage soon-to-be members before their term begins. Invite them to events. invite them to maybe, if there's a portion of the meeting they can come to. Have a committee lead reach out to them, if that makes sense, or someone from who's in a similar role reach out to them ahead of time. And have them, talk through, this is what we're doing, we're so happy to have you, and this is how you're going to help us serve, help lead this ministry. And of course, ask others, right? Ask your district, ask other ministries around, do you have resources that we could copy, right? We could use, because our people are different from your people, that we can potentially use in our ministry to grow leaders. Training-wise, very similar, right? So ask your lay leaders what they would like to learn. Unfortunately, they don't know what they don't know, so they might not have an answer for that, right? But if there is we had an issue. What I found on the boards I've been on is that training happens when training is really critically needing to happen, right? So we had an issue about 2 years ago where some parents were really fired up about an issue at the school. And they wanted to come in, and they wanted to make the comments to the board. And so for the first time in a while, we dusted off our policy and say, how does this work again? Because no one ever comes to these meetings, right? How does this work when they want to come speak to the board? What do we need to do? How do we need to do this? And we brought in our district ed exec for a special training, Al Freeman, who's now the head of LCMS school ministry. He did a great training for us. And then we were all up to date on what's the best way to handle comments at a board meeting. But 2 weeks before that, we probably had no idea. Maybe our chair did, but so let's not wait until we're kind of in that mini crisis mode to train, and when it's almost too late to train our board, right? So, and that's where, reach out to your district. We reached out to Al. Al had these great resources. He came out and spent a couple hours with us, and it helped for sure. So, what would most benefit our ministry and those we serve if our board knew this or knew more about this, right? And that's going to be different for all of you probably, but how can we approach that? And search for online resources. There are free resources out there. I mentioned Board Effect, National School Boards Association. I came from the world of public schools, worked there for 10 years. I know there's a lot of great resources out there. National Council of Nonprofits. Of course, a lot of stuff is paid, but there are free resources, and if you can find something that applies to what you're doing or could be doing at your ministry, it's probably worth the time to take a look about what you can do to help your board.
I was going to say, I got a certificate in nonprofit administration from a local university, but one class, which was just 1 month, was on board governments for nonprofits. And just even taking a single class like that through community college, where you have people who professionally do that, it's just having the conversation of what does it look like to have an effective and equitable board that's all in.
Oh, thank you. Next, I've got two ideas that are a little beyond this, right? This is kind of like stating the obvious, like I said, a little beyond this. So I work at Concordia Plans, and I have a coworker. We have a coworker who's got some really great stuff in place, and she does a lot of work with the Concordia Plans Board of Directors, which operates a little differently than a lot of your boards probably, but a lot of the principles are still the same. And I told her I was doing this, so there's her picture. This is Sherry. Stephanie used to work at Concordia Plans, so she knows Sherry. And Sherry's got really great stuff on two topics, and more but here I'm going to share here on board mentorship and board self and peer review. And I read this stuff like, this is really, really good stuff, and it could apply to those who are serving at your ministries as well. So board mentorship, we've talked a lot about like bringing them in. How do you help them, put them in the best place to start when they first start out serving as a lay leader? And here's the objectives of the program. I just pulled this directly from something Sherry had created about assimilating new board members in the culture, providing guidance, support, and connection for new board members. Board members come in, or council members, or volunteers in a particular role, and they might feel lost at the beginning. Like, how can we help them along? And this is what this mentorship program does. I know this is small. I'm happy to share this, and I'll actually tell you in a few minutes where you can find this very easily. But so this is, and the CPS board meets quarterly. So your schedule could be different, your timing could be different, but this is the process that they have put forward. So I'll just go over some highlights real quickly. So month one, basically what they do is they match up a new board member with a mentor board member, someone who's been on the board for I think at least a year or two, couple of years. They both agree to have that relationship. There are expectations within that relationship about number of touch points and the types of things you'll talk about and things that you'll do. And these are the kind of the roadmap for how it works, right? So in month 1, we'll share previous board experiences with each other. We'll share expectations. What is the mentor supposed to do? Review basic information about the ministry and answer questions. Provide an overview of the board culture. How to prepare for a board meeting. What happens at meetings? Like, what are you about to come into here, right? And then over here, there's a suggested reading for the new board member, the ministry's website, orientation packet materials, if you have that. If you don't, you can build that. So then there's a board meeting. Following the board meeting, right? The mentor clarifies the roles of board, provides an overview of the board roles and its committee. In month 3, review the ministry's org chart. Discuss the board's responsibility. Discuss board membership. The mentor answers questions about financial statements, outlines lines of communication between the board and the president and the committees, or the pastor, whoever that is. In month 4, discuss committee responsibilities, how committees work, meeting agendas, make introductions to chairs of committees. Again, your timing might be different based on your meeting cadence and the structure of what you're doing, but I thought there were really great ideas in here about how that mentor can help that new board member become more comfortable in what they're doing. Sooner rather than later, right? The idea of involving them earlier, if you can, even before their term starts, is fantastic. But once they get there, let's give them a fighting chance to be a contributing member of the board earlier rather than not, right? So, and it goes on a little bit here, month 5 and 6. This is following the second board meeting. As I said, they meet quarterly, so the timing's all different, right? But discuss the ministry's vision and values, discuss metrics and priorities, assess the mentoring relationship, and then in month 6, discuss peer and self-review. We'll talk about that in a second. Board effectiveness and other further training needs for the mentee. So I had heard this was happening, and then I talked to Sherry a little bit. I said, this is fantastic stuff, and I think this really belongs in this conversation about how do we build stronger leaders, is we help build them up through other leaders, right? And if you're talking about not a board, but someone who has led a action team, right? And I don't know how to lead an action team. Well, maybe I can talk to someone who has led an action team, and who really did see it, came and went in 3 months. And it was a great experience, and I would do it again, right? And so what is that possibility to talk to someone who's done that, who I can learn from, who I can have connection with, and I have questions, I can reach out to that person and say, oh, my action team, I'm having a hard time getting people to do X, Y, Z. Well, I had that same challenge, and here's what I did, right? And so that mentoring idea, maybe that might work for you in your ministry for certain roles.
One thing we've done,
yeah,
and this has been, some of this is convicting because I don't think we do a very good job. And I was the missions pastor, then I was the interim pastor when our pastor retired, and then now I'm got called to be the permanent lead pastor. But we don't do a very good job of formal. I think one of the reasons we don't do as good of a job is because we have some of the same people in their roles forever. We come assume. But we got new people come in, and we haven't done a very good job of orientating them. But one thing we did do is we have a lay leader that's retired and has a kind of HR background, and we create descriptions of all of the positions, like a description of what the president of the board does, and what the and we even to the point of just what is and then we're divided into 2 groups, so we gotta have it instead of elders and council, we have board of directors, council, and then we have a spiritual leadership team, which is made up of men and women, the whole elder thing. But because we think we want women, and then one has a very specific role related to the business of the church. The other has a more specific role related to the ministry of the church, and some are on both. So we did a really good job of creating a description for each of those positions. But I think the next step for us is to really have a more formal orientation process. And then also, but what I found is that those descriptions are helpful in a mentoring relationship because as you talk to people, you can say, oh, they really would be better at this in this role. Because you learn more about them, they learn or they learn about the opportunities. I think a lot of times we just want to get all the positions filled, and we don't really think, well, is this a good match for their gifts and personality and interest?
Exactly.
So that's been helpful to have a written description of each, and they're all long. I mean, the whole document is like 3 pages, and that's for church council, our preschool board, and spiritual leadership teams. That's 3 different kind of.
Yeah, when you're outside those roles, you don't really have any idea what you do, right? And when I joined the Board of Elders, I didn't know what the Board of Elders did besides communion, and then I found out, and we did it, and we refined it, and all that good stuff. But yeah, I love that idea, and the specific roles within the leadership bodies, or the specific roles as a committee or a team lead, and what that looks like. I mean, even going back to...
I love the idea of we've done that before too, is that instead of having permanent boards, like a board of youth or whatever, I think a lot of churches have gone away from that to have the action teams that meet for a purpose, and then once that purpose is resolved, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of churches have done this for like a call process, but you could do it for any number of, like right now we have a strategic planning committee, like we're putting together a strategic plan in like 3 to 5 years. Well, that's not going to be a permanent, but we even have a written description of what they're supposed to do. Like, just because it is, it's helpful to have, for people to look, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Have it, be able to.
Yeah, even roles like kind of related to action teams. I showed at the very beginning, right, with my little lay leader resume. At Christ Memorial, I was a servant day site leader for 5 years now, or whatever it's been, and I've done it at 3 different sites. And we used to do, now we're spreading it out over a month, but we used to do like this big day of service where 300 members would be sent over to 40 different sites or whatever it was, right? And I know that it can be a challenge to say to someone, we think you'd be a great site leader for the day of service. Well, what's involved? Well, if I can really understand, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to recruit the people and talk to the people at the site and organize that, and I got to buy the supplies, and I got to do this and I got to do that. Well, it's really not that bad to hear, and they did do a really good job. After a couple of years, they learned, like, walking people through, like, what is expected. Here's a timeline. Like, what makes the most sense. It's really not that hard to be a site leader on a servant event. And that's kind of a one-day action team. And maybe next year we'll do it again, and we'll get a few more people. And I feel confident in being a leader. And, once they hooked me in to be a leader, I come back every year, and I'm a leader, and that's cool, and I enjoy it, right? And it's also, for an almost all-in, it's also a good way to serve, right? Because I can be really involved for a couple weeks leading up to it, and then it happens, and then I move on to the next thing, right? And that's not bad, right? We did some good work there. So I love that idea, just like, what are we doing? What's the expectation in this role? Yeah. The other thing that Sherry has going on that I'm going to share is a review process, a peer and a self-review process. So I'm not sure that I understand the exact timing on it, and I don't know if Ken knows either, but I know that the members of the board, Concordia Plans board, are reviewed by their peers on the board and are asked, and the peers are asked these questions about the member on the board. I think it's when the member's term is up. It might be at some other interval as well, and there's a couple more slides on this, but asking the current members about this person, right? Is this person demonstrating professional and spiritual leadership? Are they communicating appropriately? Are they focused on core values? Are they identifying problems and suggesting potential solutions? Sherry did share with me some peer and self-reviews that had been done previously. It's really, really interesting to see the way that board members are commenting about their fellow board members. And there's a lot of Lutheran nice going around on those, but people say things in the way they say it, right? Like, so-and-so doesn't talk a lot, but I think he could contribute a lot more because when he does talk, he's got really good things to say. And those kinds of like feedback things that can be shared with that member. Here's some more. Are they demonstrating knowledge of issues? Do they contribute to discussion? Do they add value and unique perspective? What is their attendance like? Are they working with management? Are they encouraging management to set and achieve challenging goals? I think there's one more. Oh no, that's the end. So that's that peer evaluation, and then those answers are consolidated and shared with that member, and he or she can say, okay, obviously I have some things to work on here, or whatever the case is. And I think this can work in a lot of ways. This can work for your councils, your boards. This can work for your leaders of your teams and your committees. What went well, what didn't go well, and I can maybe improve myself as a leader.
Who is consolidating and reviewing? Is that Sherry? And is Sherry, I'm just trying to find who is the person that's responsible for helping that board member grow then?
I'm not sure that I know. I mean, I know that Sherry probably, she works very closely with Jim Samft, our president. So Sherry and Jim, but probably ultimately the board chair plays a real role in that, right, as the leader of the board. And then if that member has a mentor, that person as well. I would think that's where it's coming from. Yeah. And I also found this really interesting. This is the self-evaluation. So our board has, terms, and you can come up for another term, and you can either be reelected or not, or reappointed or not, I guess in our case. And so really interesting questions right here. Am I an effective board member? What are the strengths and contributions I'm bringing? Where do I need to grow and improve? What areas confronting the board interest me? Am I satisfied with my performance as a board member? And I also saw someone's response. It's really interesting stuff, response to these questions, like really make you think. And I'm thinking about, people who are filling seats or who occasionally contribute. My term is up and I might say, yeah, really, I don't know what I'm contributing here. And I've been kind of forced to think about it. And there might be someone better who could serve this organization better, who's really kind of have that connection. What would help you better fulfill your obligation? Are there areas you would like to expand your involvement? I act in the best interest of the plan's members. These are agree, disagree questions. I'm fully informed of my responsibilities. I actively participate in discussions. And I think there's one more slide. I know and understand our mission and values. Number 13 is a really important question. Has your situation changed? Like maybe you have a new job, it's taking up more of your time. Maybe you're something going on with the family. Maybe there's an illness and you just can't contribute the kind of time that we kind of need out of you. That's okay. It's okay to admit that, right? Do you wish to be reappointed for another term? That's the big question. You've been through it. Do you wish to come back, right? And so ask them. If that's even a conversation, ask them. And then have you been able to make contributions you want to make since joining the board? So maybe not 15 questions deep would make most sense for your ministry, but I think asking board members or leaders or team leaders to think about how you're contributing to the organization could be really eye-opening for the ministry and for the leader. So I really liked that stuff. When I saw that, I said I need to use this, and she was happy to contribute it to the presentation. So I have one more thing to talk about, and then we'll wrap. So connecting lay leaders. So at Concordia Plans, we are very, very happy that in the last week we launched a new tool for lay leaders that we're going to talk about here. And I'll give you the quick background, because I've heard it more than once. Ken, he's my boss. He used to live out here in this area, right? Phoenix area, and was a congregational president, LCMS Church. And it was during the time of some big challenges for his church. It was a global economic crisis, but also lost a senior pastor, had to go through that process for the first time in a long time. And looked around and said, I would love to talk to somebody who's been through this. I'd like to talk to somebody who has had these challenges. And I either wasn't able or it was difficult to find someone who was able to do that. And then Ken thought, all those years ago, wouldn't it be great if there was an online place where lay leaders in the LCMS could come together to collaborate and share resources and ask questions and answer questions for each other. And it only took, a decade and a half? Here we are. 14 years. Okay. So here we are, and we call that ShareBoard. So ShareBoard just launched on Wednesday, 2 days ago. It is brand new. It is completely free to use for your lay leaders, and we would ask that you encourage them to use it. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is here, show you some screenshots, then we'll have time for if there's any other conversation at the end. But as I said, it's an online platform where lay leaders can connect to share questions, answer resources, an opportunity to educate and support lay leaders. So all of you in your roles, whether you are a pastor, whether you are a lay leader yourself, you, as a lay leader, may want to use the tool. You could encourage others to use the tool to enhance what you're doing at your ministry by learning or sharing with other ministries across the LCMS. Why is it needed? I think all of you know, right, based on the roles that you're in, but lay leaders can often be left searching for answers. If anyone was at the 5 o'clock last night, the plenary, Ken talked for a few minutes about that. That's what he talked about here at ShareBoard, so you're getting a little bit more in-depth on it. And of course, lay leaders need good information. They need good information from reliable sources to do what they're doing. So ShareBoard provides lay leaders a valuable resource by helping them connect with others in similar roles to ask and answer questions and discuss topics around. This is just a starting point right here. These are the kinds of things that we threw out there, but there's 1,000 more topics that could be talked about on the ShareBoard that we are hoping that LCMS lay leaders come together and say, hey, we're confronted with this. Has anyone dealt with this? And how did it go? What did you learn? How can you help me understand how to navigate this issue? So this is where we start. you can go to Concordia Plans. I'll have a QR code here at the end too, and a slide with the address. You can go to concordiaplans.org ShareBoard. It's on our website. It's in the navigation. Over here, there's a video. I'm not going to play it for you. There's a video here we shot with a lay leader at a St. Louis area ministry who talks about ShareBoard and the value that it can bring. And then you can very easily jump in to ShareBoard right there. This is what ShareBoard looks like when you first get there and when you have not yet joined us. When you register, lay leaders have to tell us who they are, their email, and what ministry they're affiliated with. We aren't going behind the scenes and triple checking that everyone is actually on the church council they say they're on, because we want to provide access to people, but we need to know who you are and what ministry you're with.
Just limited to church council?
No, we'll get there in a second.
Okay.
Not at all. Once you get to ShareBoard and you're logged in, this is basically what we've created, and there's more beyond this I'll show you in the next couple slides. But ShareBoard operates on the idea of communities. So communities are set up for different roles in lay leadership. Right now we have communities set up for church councils, for school boards, for treasurers, for fundraising folks, fundraising leaders, and for volunteer leaders or volunteer coordinators. We are able and happy to set up more communities as they are needed in the LCMS. And that's where, this is the first thing you're going to see on ShareBoard, community request. If there's another need, if there's something that makes sense, that shoots an email over to me and one of my colleagues, and we say, okay, there might be a need here for another group. Also on ShareBoard, there are, if you could see the rest of the screen here, this is kind of your feed right here, and this is what's happening in your communities that you belong to. Right now, you're seeing a resource that was posted just yesterday that we added to the community. When people join ShareBoard, they are automatically in what we're calling the All Leaders group. So they will see things that we post for everybody, which we thought was a great way to get people kind of into it. And then they can move from that All Leaders group into a church council group or into a school board group or whatever that group is, where the questions might get more, or the topics might get more specific to what's happening. But in the All Leaders group, we're asking and kind of posing bigger questions and putting resources out there for folks. And of course, this is not all us asking questions. It is right now because we just launched. But where we want to get to is we want to have lay leaders asking, answering, responding, posting resources with each other, and really growing the platform in that way. I mentioned communities. This is the All Leaders community. You can see that when you go there, there are 2 discussions that have actually been posted by us. This is one of our colleagues that have been posted by us, where we're putting some questions out there and we're saying, respond. We want to get a little back and forth started. And then we have announcements over here, and then we have our library down here, which I'll show you in a second. But very easy to use, very user-friendly. When folks come in and they want to see what communities there are, they just click communities up here at the top. And they can see the drop down, or they can go to the community listing and easily request to join one that it makes sense for them to be on. If they're a church council person or whatever the case is, they can request, they'll get approved, they'll come into ShareBoard, and they can start interacting with others in the similar roles in the LCMS. I mentioned the library. There's a video of me I shot yesterday. But in the library, we have posted resources, white papers. We're going to be posting a couple of recorded presentations on all kinds of different topics, and you're going to see what those are in a second. And we are looking to grow there. We are looking to add resources. They don't all have to come, and we prefer that they don't all come from Concordia Plans people. We want them to come from experts who have things to share with others in the synod. So I would ask you, if you have folks at your ministry that you could encourage, take a look at it. There might be resources that they could contribute, that they can upload themselves, that will be there for others to access. Again, this is all open. This is all free for folks to use, and we hope we'll build a community of lay leaders that are supporting each other and helping each other in the LCMS. So these things are downloadable, all that good stuff. This is what you may be getting this mailer at your ministry. You may have already gotten it, but this is the mailer that's coming. 2 are going to each ministry, and they'll go to particular folks, but then we also have these cards on here. If you happen to see this mailer, I'd encourage you to tear these perforated cards off and put them in mailboxes of people who are lay leaders who might be a good person to use ShareBoard. So that will be hitting your mailbox very soon. If it hasn't, I mentioned the communities that we have at launch and that we're happy to add others. At the bottom of that list is Sounding Board, Sounding board, chair board, hopefully not too confusing. Sounding board has existed for a number of years already and is a sounding board is a place for members of the Concordia plans or people who administer benefits at ministries in the Concordia plans to ask and answer questions and connect. So we built that into ShareBoard. It's gotten a great response already on there. It's kind of revitalized that community. But for lay leaders, these top 5 are really where we're expecting people to be, and we will add communities as requested. I kept this in there just real quickly. I won't go over it all, but just to let you know that ShareBoard is monitored. We'll be watching what's posted. We're not approving everything. We just don't want things to get out of hand, right? So if things get on there and people start talking about synod politics, or they talk about something health plan related that is particular to one particular member, we'll be able to address those things. So we are watching what is happening on ShareBoard. Content. These are all colleagues of ours. These are all internal folks, but I included the slide also so you could see the kinds of things that are being talked about on ShareBoard or being written about right now. Ideas on where ministries can find lay workers. Beth Jones, she's an HR expert. She's fantastic. Works with us. Healthcare sharing ministries. There's me. I've got some Lutheran education study I've done, and then mission and vision development I talked about. And on down the line. Kelly was in here a few minutes ago. She did something on recognizing and managing stress. Right there, Sherry is who I shared the information from. Sherry's information about the mentorship program is up on ShareBoard, so it's very easily accessible to grab that. Her information on self and peer reviews is not up there yet, but will be soon. That's one of our next resources we're going to add. So you are welcome to check it out, download it from there. Supporting workers through a disability. And then at the bottom, one of our coworkers has a ton of experience in kind of hospitality and event planning. And we said ministries plan events. They have dinners and fundraisers and things like that. And she has a great piece on an introduction to hosting an event that I think is pretty useful if you find yourself in that situation. So I have here, the only thing I'll pass around here is if you could pass these around. If you wouldn't mind taking these, and if you want to take more than one, you can share them with folks in your ministry. They got the QR code on there. They have the address, and you could also grab it off here. But we really, really hope it becomes a useful tool for lay leaders and the LCMS to collaborate and to strengthen ministries all across. If you guys, I have more of those if you need them. And that, it's like a cling, yeah. So, Ken, anything else to add about ShareBoard?
Use it.
Use it. All right, we want you to use it. So that's what I have for the presentation. Covered a lot of different ground between the survey and the ideas and the ShareBoard, but anybody have any questions or thoughts you want to share? I appreciate the back and forth. It's been a great session, and I appreciate you all choosing to come here. Any other thoughts? All right, well, I would just say, as I think of myself as, I kind of categorize myself as a lay leader, and I think there are a lot of people out there like me, right, who want to serve, who want to do what they can do, who maybe can be asked to do more. We talked about that. Who maybe can be challenged to do more, and really, really strengthen those ministries. Just think about how you're helping them. How are you supporting them through onboarding, through training, through mentorship, through reviews, through those kinds of things that can really help strengthen the ministry and grow what you're doing there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why did you become an elder?
I became an elder because my father-in-law said, I think you should be an elder, and I'm going to tell the elder chair that you're a good candidate, and then I became an elder. I became a school board member because I was passionate about what we were doing at the school, and I love Lutheran education. So, yeah.